not scared.
What if one day, what would happen if a mommy Resident Evil and a daddy Silent Hill decided to have a baby on drugs? Like, a lot of drugs. Like, a plethora of drugs. Cry of fear. That's what would happen. There's been a lot of really crappy horror games that have been propped up over the years by grown men screaming really loudly into a webcam, but Cry of Fear is actually good. It's haggard as hell, no doubt. The voice acting is on par with the original Resident Evil.
Hey! What the fuck are you doing?
Not you again.
Who was he? I gotta call the police.
The animations are... But the combat, the story, the atmosphere, and sounds really make up for all the haggardness. Usually with these kinds of videos, I like to touch on the story for a little bit, but since the story is a really huge part of the game, I'm gonna try not to do that. Cry of Fear started out as a Half-Life 2 mod, which then got a separate Steam release. I'm not too familiar with the differences between the versions. I think the Steam release is more content, though. Either way, it's free to play on Steam, and it doesn't require a demanding PC to play, so definitely check it out if you can. The game takes the combat-heavy style of gameplay from Resident Evil and then mixed with the psychological horror of Silent Hill and amplifies all of it. Even though the game can be a bit funny sometimes with the way it looks, there's definitely a really deep story to the game and some very fucking extreme visuals I don't even know if YouTube will let me show, but fuck it, let's find out. By the way, if you're prone to suicidal thoughts or tendencies, God damn it, no, not those kind of suicidal tendencies. I suggest this be the last game you think about playing, because the story deals a lot with that kind of stuff. So if you're kind of sensitive to that, maybe you might not even want to watch this video, but that's just a little warning. You play as Simon, a young teenage edgelord looking for his way home after getting epically nay-nayed by a car. And blacking out and waking up in an alleyway. By the time he notices something is wrong, though, he's wandering the streets of Sweden overrun by nightmarish creatures. Huh, kinda sounds like modern Sweden, doesn't it? Oof! But unlike modern Sweden, you can actually get a ton of weapons to use to defend yourself. You start out with a switchblade, which has 2 attacks. Blade up is faster but less damage, while blade down is slower but more damage. Simple. You can dual wield some weapons in the game with Simon's mobile phone, but you could also dual wield pistols as well. You get quite a few pistols in this game, surprisingly. Since Simon's mobile phone is really your only source of light in really dark portions of the game, it's very useful. Although, for a brief moment in the game, you can get a flashlight modification for the Glock, and that's definitely very useful. You should definitely keep an eye out for that if you play this game. The main weapons you'll encounter are the Glock, shotgun, M16, and a hunting rifle. The Glock is easily the most useful weapon in my opinion. You'll also run into 2 other pistols, a P345 Ruger and a VP70, which, if anyone who's played Resident Evil knows, that's a clear reference to Leon's handgun of choice, and makes an iconic appearance in multiple Resident Evil titles. So, whoever wanted to do the guns in this game and was in charge of that, very good job. Good taste, I like them. There's a lot of guns in this game, even I didn't know about in the game files. If you look, you can apparently swap weapons that are in the game for different weapons, like if you know how to, like, mod and shit, I guess. I don't know. Don't ask me how to do it. And there's also a TMP which you can get by donating $5 to the developers. I've never used it before, I've never donated, but if you enjoyed the game, that's your kind of thing, I would definitely give them support. Now moving on to the enemies, there's a ton of enemies, and all of them are pretty creative looking and have some differences between each other. You have your standard zombies usually, and there's a bit different ones. There's a few different varieties of crawlers and a few different varieties of like these running dudes. There's like these Michael Myers looking motherfuckers too, and they can run really fast and also apparently follow you through certain areas. Each boss has a pretty unique way of defeating them, and the game kind of changes it up, so not every boss battle is just dumping bullets into it until it stops moving. The enemies are definitely much more inspired by Silent Hill, but with some Resident Evil sprinkled in there, of course. The first boss is a giant eye on its back, and it's the weak point, so you definitely know where that came from. But for the most part, you could tell, like, they're definitely, like, psychological kind of horror-looking monsters, not necessarily, like, bioweapons or anything. The inventory, though, is where we see, like, the big Resident Evil reference more so than Silent Hill, because Silent Hill, from the games I've played at least, you never had a limited inventory. You pretty much just keep whatever you pick up. But in Cry of Fear, you only have 6 inventory slots, which is kind of similar to Chris in Resident Evil 1. This is where you put keys, tools, and weapons, pretty much everything, except ammo. Ammo doesn't take up any inventory slots, which is pretty cool. You also have a health and stamina bar. The stamina bar is pretty decent. I wouldn't complain really about it. It's probably one of the better stamina bars I've seen in games. It's definitely not nearly as annoying as some of the other ones I've seen. And to regain health, you inject heroin, yes, heroin, straight into the cuts in your arm. Doing this too many times frequently will give you blurry vision and, like in real life, will eventually kill you. Yeah, and about the inventory, the game doesn't pause when you open it, and this really gets annoying when trying to unlock doors with the key and you have about half dozen Michael Myers rejects on your ass. Resident Evil or Silent Hill, if you have a key to a door and examine said door, the game knows you have it in your inventory and it'll say you've used this key to open a door. But for some mind-numbingly stupid reason, they removed this in Resident Evil 7 and the Resident Evil 2 remake, but at least in the RE2 remake, the game actually pauses, unlike Resident Evil 7. But anyway, Cry of Fear does the same thing, and it can get really frustrating when you're trying to open a door and you keep getting hit. You'll definitely take a lot of health. By far, the game's biggest achievement is the sound, though. The sound in this game is absolutely incredible. And not even just the soundtrack, but we will talk about the soundtrack right now. The soundtrack from the game is absolutely beautiful, and the sounds of the monsters is really great and downright chilling sometimes. But I will admit, though, there are also times where it just kind of sounds like a dude screaming into a microphone. But, like, it's cool, though. A lot of the sounds in this game are really cool. Like, I'll play some clips for you. All the music in the game fits its appropriate area, and one cool thing it shares with Resident Evil is occasionally you can hear, like, faint moans in the background. If you've played Resident Evil 2 and 3, you'll remember that, how, like, when you're exploring Raccoon City, you'll kind of hear, like, faint moans in the distance in between, like, ambient noises and stuff. It's very cool, and I like that they did that in this game, too, because I feel like that's a really cool thing to do. Without revealing too much, there's kind of a pursuer enemy in the game with a chainsaw, and there are certain areas he doesn't appear, but you can kind of hear his chainsaw revving, and you could also hear him screaming, and this is after you've encountered him already, and it can be extremely nerve-wracking. But if you're a cool kid like me, the first encounter with him, you can get an M16 from the room he breaks out of, but you gotta go fast. The level design can be a bit weird at times, with these just kind of blank hallways to move between locations, and I mean, they're usually pretty short, and you don't really spend too much time in them, so I wouldn't really complain about them too much. The game does really know how to change up the pace and the environment. For most of the game, you're going through the streets of Sweden, but then, you know, there's a forest, there's a subway station, there's parks, there's a forest, an abandoned asylum, abandoned buildings in the woods. It's all just very cool. And each area, respectively, does a very good job nailing its environment. Now, there's also puzzles in this game, and they range from, okay, this is straightforward, to what the actual fuck am I reading? Now listen, I'm a real stubborn SOB when it comes to looking up stuff for games. I have to be stuck for hours, possibly even days before I look up a puzzle solution. But to this day, I still have absolutely no clue how you're supposed to do the park puzzle without a guide. I don't know what any of this means, and I don't think I ever will. But this isn't IGN, folks. We don't call games bad because they're hard. If anything, it makes the game better if it's more challenging. Because so many games nowadays are so easy, I appreciate the level of difficulty a lot of the puzzles have. Also, the most interesting thing about the puzzles is that most of them are randomized, like such as codes and stuff like that. So even though you've seen a lot of the code entries in this video, they are not the code entries you're going to be getting when you play the game. So I've basically spoiled none of the answers to any of these puzzles, so heh. Overall, Cry of Fear is a really great experience if you're a Silent Hill or Resident Evil fan, or you just love horror stuff in general, and you're looking for something new to play. This is a great place to start if you can look past some of the rougher edges that are in the game, because like I said, it's definitely haggard as hell, but it's got a really cool charm to it. I would definitely check it out. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like stuff like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I make Resident Evil stuff, or just horror stuff, just in general, on a weekly basis. So, yeah, if that's your kind of thing, this video is your kind of thing, leave a like, leave a subscription. Are you going to check out Cry of Fear? Have you already known about Cry of Fear? If so, Leave it all in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good one.